The voice from nowhere asterisk, the red sky of Mars, looked calm, but something strange was coming. Ryan stood on the dusty ground wearing his oxygen helmet and looking at the tower in front of him. He worked as a signal mechanic on Mars Colony 9, which was quiet and cold most of the time. No friends, no family, just machines and long silent nights. He liked the silence, or at least he thought he did. One day he climbed up the main signal tower to fix a broken panel. He opened the toolbox and started his work slowly and carefully. Then suddenly he heard a voice. It was soft like a whisper in the wind. He looked around but saw no one. The voice came again inside his mind. "Do you recognize me, human?" Ryan froze. He was alone. His heart beat faster. He looked up and down, left and right, but the area was empty. Still the voice returned. "Do you remember me? I am your childhood neighbor." He tried to speak, but no words came. He stepped down from the tower and walked around to check for hidden speakers or some prank. Nothing. He checked his comm device, but it was off. The voice was not coming from outside. It was inside his head. He ran back to his dome. He opened the door and rushed inside. He sat down and tried to calm himself. Maybe he was tired, maybe the Mars air was playing tricks. But then a soft light filled his room. He looked up and saw a shape forming in front of him. A glowing circle appeared, and inside it stood a tall girl. She had silver hair and deep violet eyes. She looked both strange and familiar at the same time. She smiled gently and said, "Hello, Ryan. You have grown up." He stepped back slowly. He could not understand what was happening. "Who are you?" he asked. She walked closer. "I told you already. I am your childhood neighbor. My name is Lyra." Ryan tried to remember. That name Lyra, it was from long ago, from Earth, from his childhood town. There was a girl with strange eyes who lived next door. They used to play together in the garden. She always had odd stories and strange questions. Then one day she was gone. Her family left without a word. He never saw her again. "It cannot be you." He said, "You are not human." Lyra nodded. "Yes, I am not fully human. Not like you, but I was sent to Earth as a child to study your world. You were my friend. And now I have returned." Ryan felt cold. This was not a joke. This was not a dream. He looked at her again. Her skin had a soft glow. Her voice was warm, but not normal. He asked, "Why now? Why did you come back?" Lyra looked out of the small window at the red planet. "Because, Ryan, they are coming, and they will look for you. Because you are not just anyone." "What do you mean I am just a normal man?" "You are not. You are part of something bigger, and you carry something inside you, something that was hidden long ago." Ryan did not understand. His hands shook. He asked, "Why me? What did I do?" "You were chosen, even if you did not know. And now they know it too, so I came to find you before they do." Ryan stepped forward, his voice low. "Who are they?" Lyra looked into his eyes. "The Drow, a race that wants to destroy your kind and mine. They search for people like you, hybrids, people with a special bond between two worlds. You are a bridge, Ryan. You are the key to stopping them." Ryan's mind raced all these years. He lived in silence, thinking he was alone and ordinary. But now this an alien girl from his past, a warning, a strange future. He did not ask for this. Lyra walked to him. She touched his hand. Her skin was cold, but gentle. She said, "I need you to trust me. I need you to come with me, or everything will end." Just then a loud sound shook the dome. The ground trembled. Ryan ran to the door and looked outside. A dark shadow moved across the Mars sky. A black ship, unknown and silent. It hovered for a second, then flew away fast. He turned back to Lyra. "They found us," she said softly. "We must move now." Ryan took one last look at his small home. His quiet life was over. The voice from nowhere had come back, and this time it wanted him to wake up. Ryan walked across the dry red sand, following the glowing footsteps of the alien girl Lyra. His heart was heavy, his mind full of questions, his breath shallow under the helmet. Behind them, the black ship had vanished into the sky, but the fears still followed. The desert wind blew softly, whispering secrets, as if the planet itself knew what was coming. Lyra led him to a hidden cave near the canyon wall. She touched a stone, and a soft blue light appeared on its surface. The cave opened slowly with a quiet And they stepped inside. Warm light filled the tunnel, and the air felt different, like earth air, fresh and calm. Ryan looked around the place. The walls were smooth and shining with symbols he could not read. He turned to Lyra and asked, "Where are we?" She said this was one of the safe places left from the old war, a war Earth never knew about. He sat down on a small bench carved from the stone. His hands touched his head, his thoughts spinning like a storm. He remembered her. He remembered Lyra. He was 10 and she was 9 when she moved next door on Earth. She had strange eyes like the night sky and always wore a small crystal around her neck. They played together every day, running through gardens, drawing stars in the dirt. She always told him stories of other worlds, of flying ships, of beings who watched from above. One night, she showed him a box made of light. Inside it were stars and planets and a tiny model of Earth. She said one day she would leave. She said she was not like others. He thought it was all just a game. Then one morning she was gone, her house empty, no goodbye, no reason, just silence. Had cried that day alone by the fence. He waited for days, then weeks, but no one came back. And now, after so many years, she stood before him, not human, not fully. Lyra sat beside him. She looked at him with soft eyes that carried centuries of silence. She said, "I never wanted to leave you, Ryan, but they took me back. They said I had learned enough, and they erased your memories, so you would not follow, but I left a part of me inside you, a small light, and that light is waking now." Orion looked into her eyes and asked, "What am I?" She held his hand and said, "You are still human, but your mind was touched by my kind when we were children. I shared a thought link with you, a bond that grew over time. That bond gave you access to things humans are not supposed to know. And now the Draal have found that signal. They are hunting minds like yours." He felt a cold wind inside his chest. He asked, "Why me? I never wanted this." Lyra stood up and walked toward a crystal wall. She touched it, and images appeared, a large city burning, strange black ships flying over mountains, people running, screaming. She said, "This is one of many futures, but it can be stopped with you. With the link we share together, we can activate the gate on Mars, a portal that connects to a hidden system beyond their reach, a place where we can fight back." Ryan shook his head slowly. "I am no hero. I fix broken wires and silent machines. I do not know war." Lyra turned and walked to him. She placed her hands on his shoulders, her voice soft like falling rain. "You do not have to know. You only need to remember. Remember what we shared. Remember who you were before the silence." Before the Lyrian closed his eyes and saw flashes, a tree with blue leaves, a sky with 3 moons. Laughter, her face, a secret cave under their childhood homes. The crystal, the promise. He opened his eyes and stood up, his voice firm but shaking. "I will go with you, but you must tell me everything. No more half-truths." Lyra nodded and smiled, her smile not just of joy but of sadness too, because she knew what was ahead. They stepped deeper into the tunnel. The light shifted around them. Symbols on the wall began to glow. The air changed again, becoming thicker with energy. Ryan felt a pulse in his chest, a rhythm that matched the beat of the tunnel. The place was alive. They reached a large door at the end of the path. Lyra placed her hand on the center. A sound like a distant song filled the chamber. The door opened to reveal a silver ship resting in the heart of the cave. "This was my escape long ago," she said, "and now it is our way forward." Ryan stepped into the ship with her. His old life was fading behind him like a dream. Ahead lay the truth, the war, the reason he was chosen. The girl who disappeared was now the only one who could bring him back. The silver ship rose slowly from the cave, hidden beneath the red rocks of Mars, its surface smooth like water, its engines silent like sleep. Ryan stood near the window inside the control chamber, watching the planet fall behind them as stars filled the sky ahead. He had never been this far above Mars, never seen space so close, never felt so far from everything he knew. Lyra moved her hands across a glowing panel, and the ship responded like it understood her thoughts. The lights inside the ship were soft and the air was cool, but Ryan felt heat in his chest, like something inside him was changing. He looked at her and asked, "What do you mean?" "I am part of something bigger. She turned to him with eyes that held both light and shadow and said, "You are connected to the network of minds that my kind created long ago when I lived on Earth. I saw it in you, a rare signal, a mind open enough to carry the seed of memory. I shared my thoughts with you when we were young. I planted a part of my world inside you. That part is awake now, and the drawl can feel it." Ryan stepped back, trying to make sense of her words. She walked to a round table in the center of the room and touched it. A map appeared made of light floating in the air. It showed Earth, Mars, and many unknown systems filled with strange shapes and symbols. She pointed to a dark corner of the map and said, "This is where they hide. The drawl. They live in the shadows, feeding on stars, draining planets, turning life into dust. They once came close to Earth, but we stopped them. Now they have found new ways to reach your world through minds like yours." Ryan looked at the map, then at his own hands. He asked, "What do they want from me?" Lyra said, "They do not want you. They want the code inside you. The code that can open the last gate. The gate that leads to the vault of voices where ancient knowledge sleeps. If they reach it first, they can rewrite what exists. They can change all that was and all that will be." He felt cold, his body heavy without weight. He asked, "Why me? Why not you?" She smiled, not with joy but with sorrow, and said, "Because I am not pure anymore. My presence is known, my signal is marked. But you are hidden between two worlds. You are the last one." Ryan sat down, trying to hold his thoughts together. The stars outside moved like fireflies in slow dance. He whispered, "I was just a child," Lyra replied. "But now you are not." The ship slowed as it approached a large object floating in space. It looked like a broken station made of stone and metal pieces drifting in circles. Lyra said, "This was once a temple of light, a place where my people trained protectors. Now it is empty, but it still holds something you need, a memory. Your memory." They entered the station through a small gate that opened like a flower. Inside, the halls were silent and filled with strange statues and glowing walls. Ryan touched one wall and felt a pulse. A voice echoed in his mind, a voice he remembered from a dream long ago. "Welcome, child of Earth and Star." Lyra guided him to a chamber deep inside. In the center was a chair shaped like a spiral made of silver and light. She said, "Sit here and let it speak." He sat slowly, and the chair wrapped around him gently. Suddenly, his mind opened. He saw images himself as a child, Lyra beside him, a bright field under a purple sky, a group of beings watching them from above. He saw Lyra place her hand on his head. He saw her cry as she was taken away. He saw a crystal being placed in his chest as he slept. The vision faded. He opened his eyes and looked at her. He said, "I remember, now I remember the promise to protect the gate, to stop the draw." Lyra nodded. "Then you are ready." Suddenly alarms echoed through the station. Red light filled the hall. A voice from the ship cried out, "Enemy signal detected." "They are here." Lyra ran to the window and looked out. A black ship like the one before was approaching fast. She turned to Ryan and said, "We must leave now. They found your signal. They want your mind." Ryan stood. He felt something new inside him, a power not of muscle but of thought, a fire made of memory and light. He followed Lyra back to the ship. As they launched away from the old temple, the enemy ship followed, but Ryan was not afraid. The hidden war was no longer hidden, and he was no longer alone. The ship moved fast through the black sea of stars, chased by silence, chased by a shadow with no shape, no name, no end. Ryan stood near the control screen, his hands shaking, his breath heavy but his eyes full of fire. Lyra worked quickly, her fingers flying across glowing keys, her voice calm but her heartbeat loud. Behind them, the drow ship grew closer, not with speed, but with hunger, not with weapons, but with will. They were not machines, they were not creatures, they were thoughts wrapped in darkness. They were fear given form. Ryan looked at Lyra and asked, "How do we fight something that has no face?" She turned and said, "You do not fight the drawl with hands, you fight them with memory, you fight them with light." She opened a small panel beside the main seat and pulled out a crystal cube, glowing soft blue. She said, "This will protect your mind, but only for a short time. If they catch you, if they take you, you must remember me. You must remember who you are. The ship shook as a strange sound filled the chamber, not like metal, not like a wind, but like a scream with no voice. Ryan fell to the floor, his mind pulling in two directions. He saw a shadow enter the room. Not with feet, but with thought. He shouted, but no words came. Lyra tried to reach him, but a wave of dark light swept across the ship. Time stopped, everything went still. When Ryan opened his eyes, he was inside a cold black room with no walls and no floor. He floated in silence. He saw flashes, Lyra crying, the temple breaking, earth burning. Then he heard a voice deep and slow. "You are awake, little light." He turned but saw nothing. The voice returned. "You do not belong to them, you belong to the dark." "You are one of us," Ryan shouted. "I am not." The voice laughed without sound. "We were inside you before she touched your mind, before she changed your path. You were born in chaos, and to chaos you shall return." Suddenly light broke through the darkness. Ryan fell hard onto metal ground. He was inside a prison, a ship, a cage made of thought and steel too. Tall figures in black armor stood before him, their faces hidden by smooth masks. One of them spoke. "You carry the seed, we have waited for your thoughts." The last key. Ryan stood up, weak, but not broken. He said, "I will not give you anything." The masked figure walked forward and placed a hand on his head. Pain entered like fire, images twisted, memories bent. His name faded. His voice lost then a sound. Soft, familiar Lyra. He saw her face in his mind, smiling under a tree, laughing near the river. She whispered, "Remember me. Remember the crystal. Remember the garden." The pain stopped. Ryan opened his eyes and pushed the figure back with a wave of unseen force. The ship lights flickered, alarms echoed, voices screamed. Then the wall behind him exploded with blue light. Lyra appeared holding a silver rod glowing like a star. She moved fast, striking without sound, pulling Ryan from the cage. They ran through the halls of the ship. Doors closed, walls shifted. The drawl tried to trap them again, but Lyra knew the path. She moved like memory. She moved like hope. They reached the outer bay. Ryan turned and saw one of the dark figures following them. He stepped forward, raised his hand and released the force inside him. The figure flew back and hit the wall, breaking into smoke. He looked at his hand. He did not understand the power, but it was there, waiting awake. They jumped into a small pod and launched into space. The drawl ship vanished behind them, swallowed by its own shadows. The pod floated alone but free. Ryan looked at Lyra, her face pale, her body weak. She smiled, a small smile but full of pride. She said, "They cannot hold you now. You are more than they feared. You are more than they hoped." He asked, "What now? Where do we go?" She looked at the stars, to the gate, to the source, to the place where your true self was born. Ryan leaned back and closed his eyes. He saw the garden again, the tree, the river, her face. He remembered everything, and now the war had truly begun. The pod floated through space like a lost thought between dreams and silence, carrying two souls wrapped in light and scars. Ryan sat still, his hands resting on his knees, his eyes closed, but his mind wide open. Lyra lay beside him, her breath soft, her energy low, her skin flickering like fading starlight. Outside, the stars moved slowly, like time holding its breath, waiting for the next moment to speak. Inside the pod, a soft voice began to speak, a voice not from the ship, not from Lyra, but from within Ryan. It whispered words he did not understand yet, somehow remembered words from a world that was not Earth. The voice said, "Your name was not always Ryan." The voice said, "Your past is a puzzle made by many hands." The voice said, "Your mind is not what you think it is." Suddenly the pod shook as a light burst from the control panel, revealing a hidden message. Lyra opened her eyes, weak but aware, and said, "We are close." She reached out and touched Ryan's hand, and in that moment, the pod changed direction without command. It flew toward a small moon, hidden behind rings of dust and ice. On that moon stood an old tower, forgotten by time, built before Earth had names. Lyra said, "This is the Tower of Switch, where memories are kept behind mirrors and light." They landed near the base of the tower, where the air shimmered like heat, but the ground was cold. Ryan helped Lyra walk toward the entrance, a wide archway covered in symbols that moved like waves. Inside the tower, the walls glowed with soft blue light. and the silence was deep like the ocean floor. They reached a room filled with floating glass orbs, each one showing a face, a place, a memory. Lyra pointed to the center where a large orb rested on a stone platform and said, "This one is yours." Ryan stepped forward, his heart beating faster, his hands cold with fear and wonder. He touched the orb, and it began to spin slowly, showing his face then. Lyra's, then a child he did not know. The room vanished, replaced by a garden with two suns and purple leaves falling like feathers. He saw himself as a small boy running through the trees, laughing, chasing someone. It was Lyra, younger, full of light, her eyes brighter, her voice softer. They sat under a glowing tree, and she gave him a crystal, saying, "Keep this safe, it holds the code." He saw a group of elders watching from the distance, their eyes full of worry and hope. The vision shifted. He saw himself being placed inside a machine. The machine erased parts of his memory, changing names, changing faces, removing the garden, the suns, the tree. He screamed, but no one heard. He was reborn on Earth, given a new family, a new history, a new dream. The crystal was hidden inside him, not physical but part of his thought. The machine had one purpose: to protect the code until the right time came. The vision ended. Ryan fell to his knees inside the tower, gasping for air as if waking from deep water. Lyra knelt beside him and held his hand and said, "Now you know." He whispered, "Why did they hide it from me?" She said, "Because if you remembered too early, the draw would have found you and everything would be lost. But now you are ready." Ryan stood slowly, his eyes clear, his voice calm. He said, "I remember the garden, the tree, the promise." He said, "I remember you." Lyra smiled, a tired smile, the kind that comes after a long storm. She said, "Then the memory switch is complete." Suddenly, the tower shook, dust falling from the ceiling, the orbs flickering like candles in the wind. A deep sound echoed from below. Ryan turned to Lyra, who was already looking toward the exit. She said, "They are here. They followed your signal." He asked how. She said the memory was locked, but the switch released light, and they felt it. They ran through the halls of the tower as the walls cracked and shadows rose from the floor. Outside, the sky turned black as a draw vessel broke through the clouds of the moon. Ryan stopped near the exit and turned around. He closed his eyes and focused on the crystal inside his mind. He saw the tree again and felt its roots touch the stars. He whispered, "Protect this place. Protect the memory." A burst of light shot from his chest, forming a shield around the tower. The draw ship screamed as it touched the light, burning, fading, breaking apart. Silence returned. The tower stood unharmed. Ryan opened his eyes and turned to Lyra, who looked at him with wonder. She said, "You have become what we hoped." He said, "No. I have become what I was meant to be." Together, they stepped back into the pod. The gate was near. The final path had begun. Asterisk. The stars faded as the pod entered the shadow of a giant ring floating above. A silent blue planet, forgotten by maps and erased from memory. Ryan stood at the window, his eyes wide, his heart heavy with fire and silence. Beside him, Lyra rested her hand on a silver panel, sending soft waves of energy into the control core. The pod moved slower now, like it knew this place, like it feared what was ahead. The ring was not a station. It was not a ship. It was not made by any living hand. It was a portal older than time itself, built by minds that never walked the ground, that never slept, that never died. Lyra whispered, "This is the gate that opens to the vault beyond the stars, the last place the draw cannot reach unless we fail." Ryan said, "I remember this from the dream, from the crystal, from the tree." She looked at him with quiet hope and said, "Yes, because it is calling to you, because it knows you are the one." The pod connected with the outer edge of the ring, and a door appeared from nothing, a door made of light and wind. Ryan stepped out first, feeling the strange pull of the gate on his skin, like whispers made of air. Lyra followed her steps, slow, her strength fading, her glow dimmer than before. They entered a corridor that stretched forever, yet ended in moments, a place where time was thin like paper. At the heart of the gate stood a mirror, not of glass but of memory. It showed not reflection but truth. Ryan saw his younger self, then the garden, then earth, then the tower, then fire. He touched the mirror and it melted into his hand, leaving behind a mark that shimmered like the Stars. Lyra placed her hand beside his, and the wall behind them opened like a breath, like a song. They walked into a chamber with no floor, no ceiling, no end. In the center floated a sphere pulsing with voices, thousands, millions, all speaking in silence. "This is the vault," she said. "This is where the first memory sleeps. This is what the drawl fear. This is what they must never reach." Ryan stepped forward, and the voices grew louder, not in his ears, but in his heart. He heard Earth calling, he heard Mars weeping, he heard Lyra's promise echo like a lullaby from another life. He said, "What must I do?" She said, "Unlock it with your name, with your truth, with your pain." He closed his eyes and spoke not with sound, but with thought. He spoke his real name, the one lost in the switch, the one given before Earth, before words. The sphere opened, and inside was a crystal, not small, not cold, but alive. It floated toward him and entered his chest. He felt everything. He saw the beginning. He saw the end. He saw the choice behind them. The chamber shook, and a cold wind rose. The drawl had found a way in, not through space, but through fear. A shadow entered the gate, a form made of smoke and broken stars. It spoke not to Ryan, but to Lyra. "You have broken the code. You have failed your kind." Lyra stood in front of Ryan, her body weak, her light flickering. She said, "I will not let you take him." The shadow moved closer and touched her, and she cried out. Her knees hit the ground, her skin turning pale, her breath thin. Ryan screamed, and the crystal inside him burst with light. The chamber turned white. The shadow screamed. The gate shook. He walked toward the shadow with slow, steady steps. He said, "This ends here." The shadow laughed without joy. "You are just a child born from lies, raised in silence." But Ryan kept walking. He said, "I am not just a child. I'm the memory. I am the key. I am the gate." He reached the shadow and placed his hand on its core. Light poured from his fingers. The shadow cracked and shattered into dust. Silence returned. Lyra lay on the floor, her eyes open, her smile soft. She said, "You did it." He said, "We did it." She reached up and touched his face. Her voice was fading. She said, "I am tired, Ryan. I must sleep now." He held her hand and said, "I remember everything. The garden, the tree, the promise." She closed her eyes and her light faded into the air. Her body became stars and vanished into the vault. Ryan stood alone in the chamber of voices. The gate pulsed once, then closed. The vault was sealed. The drawl were gone. He walked back to the pod and looked once more at the place that changed him, not with weapons, not with war, but with memory. And ahead one last journey remained. The stars above Earth looked the same, but something deep within the sky had changed, something that no one could see, but everyone could feel. Ryan stood at the edge of the clouds inside a ship shaped like a tear, floating just beyond the reach of sound and time. The earth below moved slowly, covered in blue and green and memories. He had returned, not as the boy who left, not as the man who ran, not as the child who forgot, but as something between all three. The crystal in his chest no longer glowed, but its warmth filled every part of his mind and heart. The voices from the vault had gone quiet, their mission complete, their final breath taken in silence. Lyra's presence lingered like light after a storm, like music after a dance, like the wind that moves leaves even when no one is watching. Ryan touched the controls, and the ship responded with ease, guiding him through clouds and wind and memory. He landed in a field near the place where he once lived, near the old road, near the old garden, now wild and green. He stepped out wearing a simple coat and simple shoes, but carrying something ancient, something soft and powerful. Birds flew overhead, trees swayed in welcome, the world unaware of how close it had come to forgetting itself. He walked through the grass, slowly listening to the hum of insects and the whisper of the wind. Each step pulled a thread from his past. Each sound reminded him of someone he had lost and someone he had found. Children played nearby, laughing, with voices full of joy, full of now, full of life. He smiled, not because he was happy, not because he was done, but because he was alive. He reached the garden, the same garden, overgrown yet unchanged. The same garden where he first met her, where they drew stars in the dirt, where she gave him the crystal before she disappeared. Sat under the tree, now older, now taller, its branches reaching higher than ever before. He closed his eyes and felt the world move without fear, without noise, without. Dark, he whispered her name, not in sorrow, not in hope, but in truth. Lyra. A breeze passed through the garden, soft, warm. Then he heard a voice, not from outside, not from within, but from somewhere in between. It said, "Do you recognize me?" His eyes opened. And she stood before him, not as a hologram, not as a shadow, not as a dream. She stood with bare feet and bright eyes, and the same small smile she wore when they were 10. She said, "I am not fully here, but I am not fully gone. Part of me remained with you when I gave you the crystal, and now you have unlocked it completely." Reached for her hand, and she let him hold it, not with skin, not with touch, but with memory. He said, "I thought I lost you." She said, "I was never lost. You were just not ready." To see the garden shimmered with light that came from nowhere and everywhere. Flowers opened without sound. The air smelled of rain and stars. She sat beside him and leaned her head on his shoulder. He said, "The drawl are gone." She said, "For now, but the light must always be watched. The gate must always be guarded." He said, "I will watch, I will remember." She looked up at him and asked, "Do you know who you are now?" He nodded and said, "I am not the chosen one. I am not the last hope. I am not the key. I am a bridge. I am the memory that links what was and what can be. I am human, and that is enough." Wind picked up. The sky turned gold. Her image faded slowly, not in sadness, not in loss, but in peace. She said, "When the stars sing again, I will return. Until then, live, well." He sat alone under the tree as the sun began to set and the shadow stretched fingers across the field. He looked at the sky and whispered, "Thank you, not to her, not to them, not to the stars, but to himself, for remembering, for returning, for surviving." Later that night, as he walked through the quiet streets of his old town, people passed by with smiles and songs and questions. He smiled back and said little, but felt much. He stopped at the corner where their houses once stood. Nothing remained, yet everything was still there. He turned once more to the sky. A single star blinked brighter than the rest. He whispered, "Do you recognize me now?" And in the silence the wind said yes.